Hello, good morning, one and all. Again, I am there with my YouTube channel Rajenomics. So, in this lecture, I am going to talk about budget 23-24. In my lecture 4, that I talked about the budget expectations. Now, I am going to talk about the most important points of the budget and its critical evaluation. There was an apprehension that will this budget be a populist budget, considering the fact that 9 assembly elections are in this year and 24 will see the general elections. However, government kept up the promise that it will not be a populist budget and it will be more realistic one. It shunned giving freebies, revenues, as it is popularly called by our Prime Minister, and there were no giveaways. There was no politics of populism in that. This can be seen in the fact that there was a reduction of 1.6 lakhs crore of food and fertilizer subsidies. A reduction of 1.6 lakhs crore of crores of food and fertilizer subsidies. Otherwise, also that was necessary in order to have huge outlay for capex, that is capital expenditure, which was being discussed much before the budget. So the most talked about, the most important point that needs to be underscored in the latest budget is that an increased outlay of 10 crores of capital expenditure, which is supposed to be equal to cumulative capital expenditure from 1971 to 2005, an increase of 33% over the last year. So an increased outlay for roads, railways. So all this expenditure on infrastructure is indirectly likely to give a boost to employment, because more and more people will work in this infrastructure works that will be undertaken as a result of increased capital expenditure. So their incomes will increase, their disposable incomes, that is the incomes in their hand, will increase, which in turn will give rise to consumption cycle. So the investment demand will increase and also consumption demand will increase. All this together will have a favorable impact on gross domestic product, that is GDP. Not only that, a huge outlay for capital expenditure is likely to help the capital goods industries, and a 50 years interest-free loan for state government will be continued. So that will also go a long way in strengthening the capital expenditure. So capital expenditure will have a multiplier effect, the way the famous economist Keynes mentioned through his multiplier theory. That is, when infrastructure work is undertaken, people work in that, they get employment, their incomes rise, then they consume more, there is more demand for goods and services. This in turn will give rise to more investment, and finally all this will have a multiplier effect. And then another very important point that needs to be underscored is the rationalization of personal income tax rates. In 2020, a new tax regime was introduced along with the old tax regime. People who wanted to opt for new tax regime had to forego the benefits of Section 80C for tax rebates. But somehow the assessees found that sticking to the old tax regime itself was more favorable to them rather than switching over to the new tax regime. However, now this year, the personal income tax rates for the new regime have been reduced. The number of tax slabs have been rationalized. So now the new tax regime has been made more attractive with increase in the exemption limit of 3 lakhs, 7 lakhs tax rebate. However, people who would opt for new tax regime will have to forego the tax rebates under ATC, which was available in case you made investments in LIC, Public Provident Fund. Not only that, your benefit of interest on home loan that you are paying, that also you will have to forego. However, you still can opt for the old tax regime and continue to be with it. However, you will have to mention that whether you want to go with the old tax regime or new tax regime. Unless and until you say that the new tax regime will continue to be the default option. So now there is a debate whether the old tax regime is more favorable or new tax regime is more favorable. The opinion is divided. Some of the experts opine that yes, the new tax regime is certainly now better with reduction in rates and reduction in slabs. However, there is also an opinion that no, since the SSE has to forego the tax rebates under ATC, it may not be favorable. But however, opinion is crystallized around the fact that those whose income will be up to 7 lakhs will certainly benefit from the new tax regime. However, others need to see, especially those with 10 lakhs and above, whether the old tax regime would be more favorable and new tax regime will be more favorable. Another very important highlight under this personal income tax is that those whose income is more than 5 crores, they used to pay a surcharge of 35%. Now that surcharge of 35% in the new tax regime has been brought down to 27%. Surcharge brought down for those whose income is more than 5 crores and above from 35% to 27%. This will again enhance the disposable income in the hands of the people, which is expected to give rise to some high profile consumption. Again, will have a favorable impact on GDP. So capex and personal income tax rates, the most talked about. Then apart from, in order to achieve its climate goals, the budget aimed at green growth, green investments, green jobs, and of course the green hydrogen mission with an outlay of 19,700 crores is likely to go a long way in achievement of the climate goals which India has promised. It has promised that it will achieve the net zero emission by 2070. Net zero emissions by 2070. So this is set to give rise to that in the long term. Apart from that, skilling India's youth through PM Kaushal Yojana. And another very important, India is usually criticized that the ease of doing business is somehow lacking, and for this, another very important step taken by the finance minister is that 39,000 compliances, that means about 39,000 rules have been done away with. This would make business very simple with less rules and less regulation. However, critics have certain arguments. They say fine, capex, capital expenditure, it will give rise to, but still it is not very clear how this will encourage the private sector, how this will unleash the animal spirits of private sector so that they undertake more and more investment. Another is, although employment is mentioned in the budget, but it is not clearly spelled out as to how employment can be actually enhanced. While capital expenditure will increase the employment, still experts feel there should have been some more measures to boost employment. That apart, manufacturing sector, not much is said. There was an expectation that more and more items will come under the PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme, that is supposed to boost manufacturing. But that was not clearly mentioned. That was not, no new sectors were included in the PLI scheme. And the outlay for MNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, has also been reduced. However, outlay for other employment, other government, central government programs such as PM Kisan Yojana, PM Poshan Shakti, Jal Jeevan Mission have been reduced. So all in all, the budget shunned populism. That was very much, it kept away from freebies and giveaways. That was the highlight of the budget. However, probably more could have been done in terms of spelling out as to what should be done to strengthen manufacturing sector so that employment rises. Thanks all. Keep subscribing for my channel. Keep liking it. Goodbye for now from Rajesh.